Hello, this is apestyles recording my fifth and final segment of the 200 rebuy for card runners. So I have a huge stack at the final table, which is obviously a great position to be in because you get to put lots of pressure on and win lots of pots uncontested, and you don't have to play crippled by ICM. Anyway, let's get into the first hand. I am calling a 13.5 big blind shove with ace-8 offsuit. Not a whole lot of discussion here other than Stevie being a luck box. We will move on. Yes. So in this hand, Stevie raises the button, and first off, I'd like to say that I think this is a very clear reshove. And the reason why I think it's a clear reshove is that I think that Stevie is probably over-opening this button. And he's probably opening at least 30%, and probably because he's so ICM aware is only calling 9s plus, ace-queen suited or so. And he should actually be calling tighter than that. And the reason why he should be calling so tight is because this player with 8 big blinds, and Stevie as a sit-and-go player is hyper-aware of ICM. In fact, according to this Hold'em resources calculator, when I did a raise call and raise fold calculation, putting ICM numbers in, it says that Stevie should only have a 12% raising range, and it's a really goofy range, and can only call my all-in with jacks plus ace-king suited because of that short stack. Now, this is bananas, and not really something that's realistic. You can't really have a 12% button opening range and only call someone who's reshoving you versus you with 40% of hands with jacks plus ace king suited. So what do we do? Firstly, I'd like to discuss why I think ICM is flawed, and I haven't done a whole lot of research into it, but basically, ICM means you can't play many hands in most situations, and you can't realize your edge and outplay your opponents. In fact, the only way you're outplaying your opponents is by folding versus them, which doesn't feel so good. And ICM doesn't calculate skill edge, stack depth, or the future. And speaking of the future, when it comes to future game simulation, which is a ICM calculator that also runs future hands, that's really good for like hyper turbos and such. It usually dictates looser play as a whole. So all of those things together would point to ICM being not something that you want to follow strictly. That being said, it makes a lot of logical sense that Stevie has to be very tight, especially when calling all in, when there's a huge pay jump and there's a guy with so few chips. So I would say I'm ICM aware, but I don't follow it strictly. The other thing is, let's assume that it's true that you can only raise 12% on the button here and only call 2%. Well, one logical way of being able to play more hands would be to have an only open limping strategy on the button. And I think that makes a lot more sense for a couple of reasons. It allows you to play more hands, play lower variance, and limp shove rather than having to call off your stack more. So it's not something I've really experimented with too often, but I think that it makes a lot of sense to do, especially when there's some stack size dynamics like this, is to begin limping your entire range.